Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, Jim Kelly.
In 1974, Three the Hard Way exploded like an earthquake. Three black men, Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and Jim Kelly, emerged through clouds of gunfire and blazing funk music, becoming indomitable icons of the 1970s. They were not only heroes on screen, but also powerful voices for freedom, dignity, and black pride amid a turbulent America. But the theater lights never stay on forever. When the screen went dark, their lives took turns marked by tragedy, loss, and at times, belated redemption. One became a social activist. One carried the scars of war throughout his life. One passed away quietly, forgotten by the world. 45 years later, as Hollywood has changed beyond recognition, what remains of them? The warriors of Three the Hard Way. And which of them paid the highest price for that glory? Released in 1974, the film, directed by Gordon Parks Jr., was a breakthrough in the Blaxploitation genre, a style that celebrated black identity amid the tense social landscape of America. Set to a pulsing funk soundtrack, three black men, a martial artist, a businessman, and a music producer, launch a fight against a white supremacist organization plotting to poison the water supply in three major cities. The film's pace was fast and ferocious, with action scenes shot raw and practical without special effects, giving it a gritty, electrifying energy. Motorcycle chases, gunfights in the streets, and Jim Kelly's spinning kicks had audiences shouting in theaters. Alongside Shaft and Superfly, the film helped push the image of the black hero from the margins to the center of American cinema. With a budget of only about $2 million, the movie grossed nearly $10 million upon release, becoming one of Allied Artists Pictures' most successful works at the time. The press hailed the power trio of Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and Jim Kelly as a new model of black masculinity, strong, independent, and unyielding in the face of oppression. Their style, leather jackets, dark sunglasses, sports cars, and swaggering walks quickly became a pop culture symbol, replicated in countless music videos and action films afterward. What made Three the Hard Way truly unforgettable was its spirit of resistance. In an America still burning in the aftermath of the Black Power movement, the film declared that black people were not waiting to be saved, they could save themselves. Every punch and every bullet was a response to centuries-old prejudice. From that moment, Hollywood began to recognize the massive commercial power of black audiences, a milestone that would reshape the American film industry forever. Though the Blaxploitation wave was later criticized for glorifying violence, Three the Hard Way retained a special place in history, both thrilling entertainment and a statement of identity. More than half a century later, the image of three black men standing side by side still carries symbolic weight, a declaration of freedom, pride, and loyalty. And among that legendary trio, the leader, the soul of the film, was Jim Brown, the NFL legend, who left the field for the silver screen only to embark on an even fiercer journey, that of a warrior in real life. Jim Brown, the hero who stepped off the field. Before Three the Hard Way hit theaters, Jim Brown was already a legend, a man who rushed for over 312 yards, scored 126 touchdowns, led the league for 8 straight seasons, and won 3 MVP titles. But in this action film, Brown didn't just run, he broke free. For the first time, a black man was no longer the sidekick, the criminal, or the one needing rescue, but the true hero, Jimmy Late, a calm, cold, and decisive man leading the fight against a white supremacist plot to poison the water supply in 3 major American cities. On screen, Brown needed few words. His eyes were sharp as blades. His gravelly voice carried quiet menace, and every move radiated the strength of someone who had faced the real world head-on. While Fred Williamson brought swagger, and Jim Kelly was a blaze of fire in every kick, Jim Brown was the heart of the trio. The connector, the anchor, the one who made audiences believe they could do the impossible. The scene where Brown crosses a bridge under a storm of gunfire, gripping his weapon and driving through smoke, was hailed by Jet magazine as one of the most powerful images of a black man ever put on screen in the 1970s. The film was a resounding success, nearly $10 million in box office revenue, 5 times its production cost, turning the trio of Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and Jim Kelly into a pop culture phenomenon. They became symbols of a new black hero, strong, self-reliant, confident, and unbroken. 3. The Hard Way was more than an action movie. It was a declaration that black men could be heroes, could fight, could save the world without needing to be saved. And it was Jim Brown with his steely presence and true warrior spirit who made that declaration feel utterly real. Yet Hollywood's spotlight could not calm the storm inside him. After the film, Jim Brown entered another chapter, one even more dramatic than any movie script. He continued acting in Slaughter's Big Ripoff 1973 and Take a Hard Ride 1975, then gradually stepped away from the screen. His later life was turbulent arrests for altercations, domestic violence accusations, and years spent struggling to reconcile fame with reality. But Jim Brown did not fall. From the darkness, he found a new purpose, not to score touchdowns, but to save lives. In 1988, he founded the Aimer ICANN program, helping troubled youth and former inmates rebuild their lives. He personally visited prisons, taught life skills classes, and inspired them with words like, "None of you are throwaways. If you want to rise, you will." Thousands of young people turned their lives around through his work. Earlier in 1972, Brown had launched the Food First program, providing food to thousands of poor families in Mississippi. In 1982, he received the NCAA Silver Anniversary Award for his contributions to the community. More than a social activist, Jim Brown became a key figure in the civil rights movement, standing alongside Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to oppose the Vietnam War and fight racial injustice. At 80, his voice remained deep and steady. "Life is tougher than any game you'll ever play, but if you know who you are, you'll never lose." That quote was later engraved on the memorial wall of Aimer ICANN, his spiritual legacy. On May 19, 2023, Jim Brown passed away peacefully at his home in Los Angeles, aged 87. The legend left quietly, but his echo still resounds. LeBron James wrote, "Without Jim Brown, there would be no us." Barack Obama praised him. Jim Brown showed us that greatness isn't only about sports, it's about using your power to lift others. Fred Williamson, "The hammer never falls." If Jim Brown was the heart of Three the Hard Way, then Fred Williamson was its blazing sword, the man who ignited the spirit of defiance and turned the film into a bold declaration of masculinity for its era. Born in 1938 in Gary, Indiana, Fred Williamson was once a professional NFL player competing for the Oakland Raiders and Kansas City Chiefs, where he earned the nickname the Hammer for his brutal style and fearsome elbow strikes. When he left the field, Williamson brought that same warrior energy to Hollywood and soon made America remember his name. In Three the Hard Way 1974, Fred played Jagger Daniels, a fearless, charismatic businessman willing to risk everything to save lives and protect his people. In contrast to Jim Brown's calm Jimmy Late, Jagger Daniels was pure fire, impulsive, flamboyant, and utterly unyielding. With his muscular frame, half smile, and walk that dared the world to challenge him, Williamson proved that black men could embody sophistication and power, rivaling Sean Connery or Clint Eastwood. The film's roaring success propelled Williamson to the top of the blaxploitation genre. Throughout the 1970s, he starred in cult classics like Black Caesar, 1973, Hell Up in Harlem, 1973, Take a Hard Ride, 1975, and No Way Back, 1976. In an era when Hollywood was still hesitant to give black actors leading roles, Fred Williamson made himself a star, even becoming a producer and director to control his own stories. He founded Po' Boy Productions, a company dedicated to making his brand of action films raw, stylish, and fiercely independent. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Williamson's charisma never faded. He appeared in action films such as Original Gangstas, 1996, and From Dusk Till Dawn, 1996, alongside George Clooney, and often directed his own movies. Unlike many of his contemporaries consumed by Hollywood's system, Fred Williamson smartly built an image as the man who never falls. In one interview, he declared, "I never let anyone else decide who I am on screen. If they won't give me the lead, I'll write it myself." Outside of film, Fred Williamson was also a real soldier. Few know that before fame he served in the U.S. Marine Corps, a chapter that forged his lifelong bond with fellow veterans. In later years, he actively supported wounded soldiers through organizations like the Wounded Warriors Project, raising funds and awareness. Williamson often said that physical wounds hurt less than being forgotten, and that belief drove him to keep speaking for those who served. Success, self-reliance, and independence. These three words define Fred Williamson's life. As of 2025, at over 86 years old, he still attends film events, usually in a black suit and sunglasses, walking tall, just as he did in Three the Hard Way. In a recent interview, he laughed when asked about aging. "I never retire. As long as I'm breathing, I'm still the Hammer." For later generations of black actors, Fred Williamson was a trailblazer, a man who never begged for roles and never stood in anyone's shadow. He proved that black men could be more than street heroes. They could be global icons, strong yet refined. Jim Kelly, the legendary black martial artist. With his towering afro, razor-sharp smile and whirlwind kicks slicing through the air, Jim Kelly became a sight never before seen on American screens. A black martial artist who was both free-spirited and fiercely proud, carrying the dignity of an entire generation. Born in 1946 in Kentucky, Jim Kelly was drawn to martial arts early on. After studying karate in the late 1960s, he won numerous national titles and became one of the first black instructors to open his own dojo in Los Angeles. From there, his path to the silver screen unfolded almost by destiny. His breakthrough came in 1973 when Kelly was cast alongside the legendary Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. With only a few minutes of screen time, he captivated audiences worldwide, not just with his precise kicks, but with his rebellious charisma and effortless cool. A year later, with Three the Hard Way, Kelly joined the ranks of the Black Power Trinity alongside Jim Brown and Fred Williamson. In the film, Kelly played Mr. Keyes, a stoic, silent martial artist who was the last man any enemy wanted to face. From his walk to his gaze to his spinning kicks, Kelly turned every fight into choreography. He didn't just fight, he performed. Every strike was a statement that black men could be martial artists' heroes and the center of attention. The movie not only solidified his stardom, but made him a cultural icon, representing the fighting spirit of Black America. When Jim Kelly's image appeared on posters, magazines, and gym walls across the country, thousands of young black men began to believe they too could be warriors in their own right. After Three the Hard Way, Kelly continued in action, hits like Black Belt Jones, 1974, Hot Potato, 1976, and One Down, Two to Go, 1982. Yet he refused to chase meaningless fame. In interviews, Kelly made clear he would not accept token or stereotypical roles. He once said, "I don't play villains just because I'm black. I choose roles I can be proud of when I look back." That conviction led him to gradually withdraw from Hollywood by the late 1970s. Instead of the spotlight, Kelly chose peace. He opened a dojo teaching black youth about discipline, pride, and compassion. Beyond martial arts, he was also an accomplished amateur tennis player competing in tournaments held by California's Black Tennis Association. In his later years, Kelly lived quietly in San Diego with his family. He rarely appeared in public, occasionally attending film festivals or martial arts conventions. In 2010, when he appeared at Comic-Con, audiences rose in applause, his hair now white, but his smile still radiant as ever. Jim Kelly passed away on June 29, 2013 at the age of 67 after a long battle with cancer. His death left Hollywood and the martial arts world in deep mourning. His co-star Fred Williamson said Jim Kelly wasn't just an actor, he was a spirit. He made black men believe they could throw a kick that made the whole world take notice. Today, Jim Kelly's image continues to appear in films, music videos, and artwork as an enduring symbol. He remains proof that true strength isn't found in muscle, but in belief, and that with one well-timed kick, a man can change how the entire world sees him. Sheila Frasier, The Rose Amid the Fire. In the smoke-filled, testosterone-fueled world of Three the Hard Way, Sheila Frasier's presence was like a pause, a heartbeat between explosions. Amid the thunderous punches and roaring engines, she entered the frame with a gaze both soft and strong. A woman who captured the audience's eyes even when she appeared for only a few fleeting moments. She didn't need to shout to assert herself. She simply appeared, and that was enough to make everything slow down, soften, and linger in the viewer's memory. Born in 1948 in New York to a middle-class family that cherished the arts, Sheila Frasier began her journey on small theater stages in her early 20s, dreaming of one day reaching the silver screen. That chance arrived in 1972, when director Gordon Parks Jr. cast her as Georgia in Superfly, the film that shook America by portraying black characters not as victims, but as the protagonists of their own stories. The role made critics and audiences remember her name, a woman both alluring and intelligent with a warm heart in a cold man's world. 2 years later, Sheila returned in Three the Hard Way. Quiet, understated, yet the emotional soul of the film. She played Wendy Kane, the woman connected to Jim Brown's character Jimmy Late. In every frame, Wendy was more than the hero's love interest, she was his reason to fight. In Frasier's eyes lay worry, courage, and a rare tenderness amid flying bullets. Between the taut action sequences, her character was the breath, the heartbeat that reminded viewers there was still something worth living for, worth loving, worth protecting behind all the chaos. As the film became a sensation, Sheila Frasier rose as a symbol of feminine strength in black cinema. Critics hailed her as the queen of quiet power, a woman whose mere presence gave life to everything around her. At a time when Hollywood confined black women to stereotypes of being either fiery or broken, Frasier chose a different path: elegance, intellect, and individuality. When the Blaxploitation era faded, Sheila didn't chase fame. She transitioned into television and community media, becoming a host on KNXT TV Los Angeles in the late 1970s. Her programs focused on education, careers, and gender equality, where Frasier used her voice to inspire thousands of black women. At the same time, she worked for comedian Richard Pryor's Indigo Productions as an executive producer, helping create entertainment programs rich with cultural identity. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Sheila continued to appear on screen with guest roles in The West Wing, NCIS, and Guiding Light. Each time she appeared, audiences felt a wave of nostalgia, that same smile, that same gaze, that unmistakable aura. In her later years, Sheila often said she never truly left cinema. "I didn't disappear," she once remarked. "I just chose to tell stories differently." After one failed marriage, Sheila Frasier married businessman John Atchison in 2008. The couple now live peacefully in Los Angeles, where she occasionally appears at retrospectives honoring 1970s black cinema. Her hair has turned silver, but her eyes still shine just like the day she looked at Jim Brown on screen with wordless conviction. When asked what made her proudest in her career, Sheila smiled and replied, "We didn't just make movies. We told our own history in a way no one had dared to tell before." Jay Robinson, the perfect villain. Audiences may forget the plot details, even the chase scenes, but they never forget Jay Robinson's face, the piercing stare, the sly smirk, and that serpentine voice that slithered through every line. In 3: The Hard Way, he was the embodiment of evil Monroe Feather, the mastermind behind a cruel plan to poison the water supply of black communities. Without throwing a punch or raising his voice, one cold glance from him was enough to send shivers down the spine. Jay Robinson was no stranger to villainy. Long before the 1974 film, he had already earned Hollywood's respect with his portrayal of Emperor Caligula in The Robe 1953, a role that made him an overnight star. His performance was intense, both deranged and mesmerizing, leaving audiences stunned. Critics called Robinson the actor with the eyes of sin, and from then on he became synonymous with characters of power, menace, and darkness. In 3, The Hard Way director Gordon Parks Jr. made full use of that strength. Among the trio of strong black heroes, Jay Robinson served as the perfect contrast, a white supremacist, brilliant and ruthless, who wielded intellect and influence as weapons of destruction. This symmetry gave the film a depth beyond the typical action flick of its time. Robinson's evil didn't scream, it smiled, and that made it far more terrifying than any gun. The success of 3: The Hard Way marked Robinson's return to the spotlight after years of turmoil. Having risen to fame too quickly, he had fallen hard. In the mid-1950s, Jay Robinson was arrested for drug possession, a scandal that led Hollywood to turn its back on him for years. After serving time, he slowly rebuilt his career through small roles in TV shows like Bewitched, Star Trek, and The Waltons. 3: The Hard Way became his second chance, not necessarily for a comeback to fame, but for survival in a ruthless Hollywood. People said Robinson had two faces, one for the camera and one for life. On screen, he was cunning and cruel. Off-screen, he was shy and quiet. In his later years, he lived in a small house in Sherman Oaks, California, raising cats and collecting old scripts. In a talk with film students, he once shared, "I never thought I was playing villains. I just played people who had reasons to do what the world couldn't accept." Amid Hollywood's chaos, Jay Robinson lived simply and rarely appeared in public. When invited to play supporting roles in Star Trek and Barney Miller, he accepted not for money, but because he wanted to keep breathing the craft. For him, acting wasn't a job. It was therapy, a way to stay alive, to avoid slipping into silence. On September 27, 2013, Jay Robinson passed away in Sherman Oaks at the age of 83. There was no lavish funeral, no long procession. Only a few old theater friends gathered to read poetry and share memories. One of them said Jay always played villains, but he was the kindest man I ever knew. And that was the beautiful paradox of his life. Robinson understood the darkness of humanity, and that understanding made his portrayal of evil chillingly real. He was never truly a star, nor did he seek fame. What he left behind was pure acting art so compelling that audiences could both despise him and yet never look away. Earl Billings, the man behind the door. When people talk about Three the Hard Way, most recall the legendary trio of Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and Jim Kelly, or perhaps the chilling villain Jay Robinson. Yet amid those shining names was one lesser-known face who helped give the film its rhythm, Earl Billings, who played Rob, the quiet and loyal companion of the heroes. Neither a hero nor a villain, Rob grounded the story, bringing a touch of everyday humanity into the storm of action. Earl Billings was born on July 4, 1945 in Cleveland, Ohio, the same hometown as Jim Brown. Perhaps fate had destined for them to meet on the same film set. Billings began his career not in glamorous Hollywood, but on small theater stages, taking on any role he could find from narrator to silent extra. With his deep, warm voice and expressive face, he soon caught the attention of independent filmmakers. 3. The Hard Way was one of Billings's earliest chances to reach a national audience. Though his role as Rob had few lines, his ability to convey worry, loyalty, and humanity amid chaos made the character feel more real than any dialogue could. In a world of hyper-masculine action, Billings brought warmth, the presence of an ordinary man who was afraid yet still chose to stand on the side of what was right. After the film, Earl Billings went on to build a long and steady acting career. He became a familiar face on American television for over 4 decades. Viewers might recognize him from What's Happening, Good Times, The Incredible Hulk, The Jeffersons, or Martin. In every role, big or small, Billings infused authenticity, a subtle craftsmanship found only in actors who live for their art rather than its spotlight. In the 2000s, critics once again took notice when Billings appeared in Antwone Fisher 2002, a deeply emotional story directed by Denzel Washington. His portrayal of a strict yet compassionate foster father brought audiences to tears, with the Los Angeles Times calling him the soul of the film even in just a few scenes. He went on to deliver strong performances in American Splendor 2003 and Something New 2006, once again embodying quiet, deeply human characters. What truly set Earl Billings apart was not fame, but perseverance. In an industry where hundreds of actors fade into obscurity every year, he endured without chasing lead roles or craving attention. In a small interview, he once said, "I never cared about being remembered as someone. I just want people to believe I'm real every time I appear." Off-screen, Billings led a simple, private life with a love for jazz. He often attended community events in his hometown of Cleveland, teaching acting to underprivileged children and helping them find confidence through performance. Many of his students went on to become actors, writers, or directors, and all fondly called him Teacher Billings, the man who taught them to listen to a character before speaking its lines. As of 2025, at age 80, Earl Billings still occasionally appears on screen, sometimes in a brief supporting role, sometimes in a lighthearted commercial, always with his kind smile and calm presence. He doesn't chase trends or complain about age. To him, every 10-second role is still a chance to tell a story. In a recent interview, when asked about Three the Hard Way, Billings laughed and said, "Back then, I was just a small piece of a big machine, but I'm proud to have stood alongside people who made history. Not everyone gets that chance." Perhaps it's that humility that makes Earl Billings one of the most respected figures of his generation. Quiet, scandal-free, and content away from the spotlight, he chose to be the foundation upon which others could shine. And sometimes it's that gentle, steady light that lingers in memory the longest. Alex Rocco, the face of the mafia. Some actors need only one role to carve their name into history. For Alex Rocco, that role was Moe Greene in The Godfather 1972, just a few minutes on screen, but enough to make him an icon. 2 years later, in Three the Hard Way, he returned not as the man gunned down in a bathtub by the mob, but as the face of Justice Lieutenant Denisco, representing the other side of the law. It was a bold shift, and once again he made audiences see him in a completely different light. Alex Rocco was born in 1936 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in a working-class neighborhood filled with smoke and grit. Before Hollywood knew him, he had been part of a small street gang surviving on the rough edges of Boston's North End. That passed the thin line between crime and humanity, gave his acting its distinctive edge, threatening, lonely, and achingly real. After leaving Boston to start over in Los Angeles, he studied acting under Leonard Nimoy, who would later become famous as Spock in Star Trek. From there, Rocco's life took a dramatic turn. In Three, The hard way Rocco wasn't the central star, but he achieved what only great actors can. He made people remember him even with limited screen time. His role as Lieutenant Denisco, the officer investigating a terrorist plot, served as the film's moral anchor amid the chaos. Surrounded by car chases, gunfire, and pounding funk music, his character embodied the faint but enduring belief that justice still exists, however fragile. Following the film's success, Rocco cemented his reputation as one of Hollywood's most reliable character actors. Through the 1970s and 1980s, he appeared in numerous acclaimed productions, including The Friends of Eddie Coyle, 1973, Lady in White, 1988, and Dream a Little Dream, 1989. No matter how many roles he took, audiences always remembered his sharp gaze and gravelly voice, which Rocco once joked had been forged from cigarettes and sin. By the 1990s, Rocco had become a familiar face on television. He played the father of the main character in the sitcom, the famous Teddy Z 1989, voiced the strict father figure in The Simpsons, and appeared in countless other series. Every role, no matter how small, carried his signature blend of wisdom, weariness, and warmth, the mark of a man who had lived what he portrayed. That's why Hollywood fondly called him the good gangster, the kindest tough guy on screen. Off-screen, Alex Rocco was humble, family-oriented, and deeply devoted to his craft. In an interview, he once said, "I came from the real world of violence. Acting gave me a chance to tell that story, not to make people afraid, but to make them understand." He married twice, had 4 children, and remained close to his colleagues throughout his career. Those who worked with him often said he was the first to arrive and the last to leave, set treating acting as a sacred ritual rather than a job. On July 18, 2015, Alex Rocco passed away at his home in Studio City, California, after a battle with cancer at the age of 79. Hollywood mourned deeply. Tributes flooded major newspapers, recalling both the swaggering Mo Green, who met his fate in The Godfather, and Lieutenant Denisco, the steadfast symbol of justice in 3: The Hard Way. Corinne Cole and Charles Ciaffi. Amid the roaring gunfire and pulsing funk soundtrack of 3: The Hard Way, 2 fleeting faces left an oddly lasting impression: Corinne Cole and Charles Ciaffi. They were neither heroes nor outright villains. Instead, they belonged to the film's quiet backdrop, where Hollywood seemed to reflect on itself, alluring, powerful, and full of unspoken goodbyes. Corinne Cole, once known across America as Laurie Lane, a 1960s Playboy model, appeared as Mrs. Feather, the wife of the villain Monroe Feather Jay Robinson. Her role was brief, but her cold gaze and enigmatic smile were unforgettable. Corinne entered the frame like a lost beauty amid ambition and evil raising. A subtle question: was she a victim or an accomplice in her husband's deranged plan? In real life, Corinne Cole carried her own story of departure. After gaining fame in Peter Sellers's The Party 1968 and several comedies, she walked away from Hollywood at the height of her career. No scandal, no spectacle. "I was once desired for my beauty, but I wanted to be loved for who I am," she said in a 1982 interview. From then on, Corinne chose a peaceful life. She married, wrote, and devoted herself to charity. Now at 88, she rarely appears in public, living proof that sometimes leaving the spotlight can be the most beautiful victory. Charles Ciaffi, on the other hand, was born to stay in the craft. He carried the aura of a classic Italian gentleman, calm, firm, and quietly intense. In 3: The Hard Way, Ciaffi played a government agent walking the line between morality and power. It was a small role, yet layered with meaning, representing the white establishment struggling to hold its ground amid the surging tide of black resistance in the 1970s. Ciaffi became a familiar face during television's golden era, appearing in Shaft 1971, Kojak, Law and Order, and Ryan's Hope. Though rarely a leading man, he was always the anchor of every scene, his sharp eyes, resonant voice, and deliberate entrance commanding attention. After leaving the screen, he turned to teaching at New York University, passing on his craft to new generations of actors. "Even a small scene is a chance to say something true," he once told his students. In 2023, Charles Ciaffi passed away at age 88, leaving behind a modest yet profound legacy, a man of roles that knew how to listen. Together, Corinne Cole and Charles Ciaffi were not the soul of 3: The Hard Way, but they were its quiet lifeblood. Without them, the film would have lacked its depth, its pauses between the chaos, and its fleeting touch of humanity amid the storm of politics and action. If you love the old legends and the real stories behind the screen, subscribe to the channel and join me in exploring the films that changed Hollywood, one person, one generation, one heartbeat at a time.
All data analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.